This is the Sentinel Editorial Board interview with candidates in the Democratic primary for the 20th Congressional District. And that is Congresswoman Sheila Cherfilus-McCormick and challenger Dale Holness. Certainly it's a sense of deja vu for us, and I'm sure it is for you as well. I want to begin with you, Dale Holness. We know what happened late last year, early this year. This race was decided by 5 votes. Yes. And you decided to try again. And tell us what's different about this campaign compared to the first one.
Well, for one, there were 11 candidates in the previous race. There are only 3 of us at this point in time. Many of the people who supported me strongly encouraged me that I should continue to seek this office, and hence I'm doing it. So there's a large difference in terms of the number of people in the race, and there have been a bit of shift in terms of the district also, with Miramar being removed and parts of Plantation and more of Sunrise and Deerfield Beach included. Central Broward County, an area that I've represented for many years, 18 years, as a public servant.
All right, we'll get to many of these other issues. Congresswoman, give us your perspective on what's different about this race from the first one.
Well, as Dale said, we have less people in the race, but also I've been endorsed by Barbara Sharif, the rest of the other candidates that were in the race, and I've also been a sitting member now for 6 months. I've been able to be endorsed by Nancy Pelosi, the Congressional Black Caucus, just many Democratic leaders, but everyone's had a chance to see our innovative leadership, and where we've been able to have a mobile office that serves the district 7 days a week. We've been able to do extensive casework. We've been able to really deliver on many of our promises in the district and do things that no one has ever done in this position. So I feel like we are, well, our polling lets us know that we're in the lead, but now the district has seen what different types of leadership looks like, and we've just been on the ground running, knocking, just doing everything we have to do to continue to let the district know that they are our priority.
You talked about delivering on promises, and the promise that people remember most from that first campaign is that $1,000 a month for people under the People's Prosperity Plan. I know people in the district who are waiting for those checks. What's the status of that?
Well, we actually put that People's Prosperity Plan within the first few months of me being elected. Right now, it's in Ways and Means, and we've been having a lot of discussions about it through the back door. One of the issues that we're finding is right now we're experiencing the lowest unemployment rate in the last 50 years. However, with inflation, we see that our seniors and anyone who's on a fixed income is still suffering from economic strife and barely making it every single day. And then when you compound that with housing insecurities and housing for our workforce, compounded again with the shortage in food. So we see the need still there, and we're fighting for that with a number of other initiatives also to help our district where it is today. So we said that we were going to put it forth, we put it forth, and we have a legislative process that is actually going through right now.
Dale Holness, what do you say about the Congresswoman's $1,000 a month plan?
Well, I can tell you that there are many people who thought that they would get this $1,000 already. In fact, some, when they voted at the voting site, they were inquiring to the clerks, how do they collect that $1,000? The way it was presented was as though they would automatically get that $1,000, not that there was a process for it to be gone through. Now that $1,000, estimates are that it would be $1 trillion annual. Where will we get that out of the budget? What will we cut? What will we change? How will that be accommodated? Yes, the people in our district certainly needs help, because 1 in 5 of the district residents live in poverty. That's a huge issue. $1,000 appealed to them very much because they have tremendous needs. But is that really doable? Is it real, or is it just a gimmick to get someone to vote and support you? There has to be concrete measures taken to alleviate the plight of the people within this district, the high poverty that exists, the high cost of rent. If you look at the poverty guidelines, a family of 4, $27,479 per year is what the guideline says. A single person $12,996. How can you afford to live? Any at all? So we must do things that are structural, that are different, in order to change the dynamics that exist for the people within this district, which means we must make a tremendous amount of investment in affordable housing, something that we have not done enough of. We need to use the choice voucher Section 8 program to stimulate new development, because we need a lot more housing units in order to bring down the cost of rent. We need more people getting these opportunities on these vouchers. We need educational funds for early childhood education so that we can change the dynamics that exist within this district. There's a tremendous amount of things that must be done, and we must engage the local and state elected officials to be a part of the solution, and our community organizations.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to open the floor to my colleague, Martin Dyckman. Go ahead,
Steve, can I respond to that, please?
very briefly. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I wanted to respond to it. When we ran our campaign, we explained that it was a people's prosperity plan, and we have been doing education on the political process. Now, my opponent, Dale Holness, has been walking around telling people that the money was supposed to be there. They haven't received their check. So either it's an intentional means to confuse the people, or he doesn't have understanding about process and procedure in Congress. And I've had to have this conversation several times with a lot of our other initiatives and our constituents. In addition to that, the $1,000 relief wasn't just, that was one plan in a myriad. We've diverted already $676 million for housing. We've had so many different plans and initiatives. We've even brought Marsha Hutch into the district, who met with not just me, but also local elected officials to help our housing issue. We've even been able to connect people with opportunities when it comes to appropriations, when it comes to our 15 projects. We have a plan. We've always had a plan. We've never spoke in vagueness of this is what we're going to do to stimulate the economy. And we've been able to do exactly that. If you look at our district and the growth that we've experienced, it has been in the hands of most of the minorities in this district. We've been able to do that in 6 months. And that's how I got the respect and endorsements of Perry Thurston, Bobby DeVos, and Barbara Sharif, everybody who ran against us. But not only that, Democratic leadership has endorsed me because we've been able to get there. And in addition to that, I've also been awarded the Thomas Paine Award in Congress. It's a congressional award for advocacy and actually putting forth our issues and being effective. So those are the things. It's a combination of them. And this is an old conversation that we're rehashing, but there has still not been able to put forth a plan. It's still attack, 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 even when it comes to these ridiculous ads.
Okay. We'll return to that. I want to open the floor to my colleague, Martin Dyckman. Go ahead, Martin.
Excuse me, it's early in the day. Congresswoman, I'm still left over with a question from your last campaign. When you did get around to filing your financial disclosure, it showed that you apparently had financed the campaign with about $6 million that your company, which employs you, paid me as a consultant. And I found it strikingly interesting that a healthcare company would have $6 million to pay to somebody who's already an employee. So the question is, how do you explain that? And then secondly, did the Paycheck Protection money that was later repaid go into staking you to that race?
Okay, so let me be very clear about the funds that came out. The funds that came out that was hired through my company, those were profit sharing for that accumulated through more than 10 years. And in addition to that, when we were doing the federal vaccination program, which was a Biden-Harris administration program that was through FEMA actually brought in people as consultants to manage the program. So we hired some people to go out, but we also had to create a whole organization to manage in the different FEMA sites. If you recall, these were tents that were located throughout the states, in Jacksonville, in Orlando, in Miami, and in Tampa. So we had to go and hire a different team to actually recruit and hire them to work there. So that's where the funding came out for the actual different organizations. But in addition to that, the payout that came also to me, that was my services that I did for other projects within the organization. So and when we talk about how much we were getting paid, remember, I was the CEO. I'm the one who determined not only my paycheck, how much I received, but how much everyone received in the organization. I intentionally only paid myself $86,000 so we can save up to where it was the right moment that if I wanted to choose the money and pull out my money, I could. So I want to make it very clear because this seems to go back and forth. And I know my opponent is putting lies out saying that it was a Trump DeSantis a program, which it totally was not. And it's provable. So I just find it laughable. But I've been very clear about how we've been able to save, how I've earned my finances, and how hard I've worked.
Okay. I want to change gears here for a second. Dale Holness, in September of 2020, you appeared at an event in the city of Miramar with other Caribbean American elected and appointed officials to support the appointment of Renatha Francis to the Florida Supreme Court. We all know what happened. She was her appointment was delayed or stopped by the Florida Supreme Court because of a reason she had not been a 10-year member of the Florida Bar. Let's fast forward to now. As you know, she's a finalist once again. Do you support Governor Ron DeSantis putting Renatha Francis on the Florida Supreme Court?
Well, yes, because we have no diversity in terms of Blacks on the court now. And I think one of the strengths that we have as a nation is having diversity. If we can include everyone at the table, we're better off for it. Now, I've known Judge Francis for a while, so I know she is a good person, and that's the reason why I stepped up. In the end, folks wanted to see someone Black on the Supreme Court. We lost that opportunity in the first round. We have another chance now to get a different perspective from a different community on the highest court in the state of Florida, except for the Supreme Court of the USA.
All right, thank you. I want to ask Congresswoman Cherfilus-McCormick the same question. Do you know Renatha Francis? Would you have stood with Governor Ron DeSantis and endorsed her candidacy for the court?
Yeah, I don't know her, but I've known of what she's been able to do and the work that she's been doing. And it's really important that we have our perspectives articulated and seen through the lens. We were very active in supporting the Supreme Court justice and being elected or being selected and confirmed. We sat there with her to support her against all of the different attacks that came against her. And at the end of the day, the country is starting to recognize how imperative it is to have diverse voices in every step of the judiciary system. And so I would definitely support making sure we have an intelligent woman present so she can actually see different cases through a different lens that represents many minorities and women in our district.
Okay, and we certainly understand the argument in support of greater diversity. What about the fact that she would be another conservative, strong conservative voice on the court, and that maybe she might join in rulings that are to the detriment of your constituents?
Yeah, that's a good question, because that's something that we've been trying to address what we find here in DC also. Now, when each of these justices go through the process, it's important that we ask them the tough questions to really understand where they are. And that's one of the things that I wanted to look in further for all of them, and the accountability measures. Because we have now justices on the Supreme Court as well who said they wouldn't overturn Roe versus Wade, but they did. So we have to start implementing real accountability measures so we can actually hold them accountable for lying during the hearings or even going in that direction. Now, when it comes to her conservative views, I would like to take a deeper look to find out, well, really, are they conservative and how conservative they are?
Let me say this, Steve. The
Yes,
fact that the Judicial Nominating Committee are the ones who select the candidates to go to the governor. Then and now, we have just her in terms of the diversity that we need to have. The Judicial Nominating Committee basically is going to send conservatives forward. Now, if conservatives are going to come, can we get someone who brings a different perspective or from a different background, rather than the just white males, as is mostly the case? The Tampa Bay Tribune study that showed that if you're Black and you went before a white judge, you'll tend to get 20% longer sentence than if you went before a white judge. That says something in the whole scheme of things. So bringing people from different background who have a different life experience is essential for us to be able to at least bring that a different voice into the room.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Martin.
This brings us to one of the 2 issues on which you two seem to disagree. If I read your questionnaire correct, Mr. Holness, you're in favor of expanding the court, the U.S. Supreme Court. Congresswoman is not. She talks about accountability. But starting with you, Congresswoman, how do you get accountability out of the U.S. Supreme Court without doing something about the structure of it?
Well, the first thing that we have to start with is actually, when I talk about accountability, that if you are lying to the actual Senate committee, we have to hold you accountable, just like we do everyone else who lies to any kind of governmental committee, especially doing something as important as a Supreme Court confirmation. And we have people who have lied on the record, and we have been discussing this extensively in Congress. In Congress right now, the real argument is, do we expand or do we hold them accountable? And that's what we're looking into, holding them accountable, having proceedings to actually go through this of how they actually lied. And it's imperative, because if we keep opening and expanding the Supreme Court and other courts and keep adding, this will actually set precedent that it's okay for you to lie and say one thing during a hearing, and then you'll evade and escape any kind of accountability going further. And that's the real issue we've been having in our country, is that we're not holding people accountable. And one of the most detrimental things that happened with having Donald Trump as president, it gave a lot of people a license to go ahead and say false statements, to do false actions, and actions that are just immoral at the heart of it, and then turn around and have no accountability and just act like it never happened. So that's why I am so focused right now on having accountability. And then after we have that in place, then maybe we should consider expansion. But without accountability, we just have this issue on a larger scale.
The only method of accountability of which I'm aware would be to impeach them on an accusation that they lied to the Senate committee and the senators who were considering them. I personally think that getting a conviction of any kind on what they said to the committee would be very difficult. But would it not? What is the practical problem of impeaching them over that? Do you have any other way of holding them accountable?
Well, we talked about impeachment, which has been the major one that we've been looking at, but we've been also perusing other ones. The reason why impeachment has been one that has been talked about the most is because we have several statements from them when they said they would not overturn Roe versus Wade. So for many, not all of them, that seems to be the silver bullet that some people are believing. But I think as professionals, as people who actually understand the law, we have a duty to actually think about not just the immediate way, but to create a mechanisms that could be passed through Congress to hold everybody in the future accountable. Because I do not believe that this is just going to be a first time issue. It's going to be something that's going to continually go forward. And as we see with Roe versus Wade, this is just the first attack. There will be another ruling that we don't want to see, another ruling that they said they wouldn't rule on. So that's where it becomes extremely important that we actually have systems and mechanisms in place to hold people accountable, instead of just expansion, which just makes the issue bigger. And it kind of reminds me of, like, I always talk in terms of, if you imagine a cancer. If you have a cancer, the cancer will spread. The larger the body, the more room it has to, it'll spread. You have to deal with what is causing the cancer. Why is it that they feel like they are immune to any kind of accountability? And that's why we're looking at different new mechanisms as well as impeachment. But impeachment will not address some of the other justices. Only a few will actually be able to be impeached based on those statements.
So I would say to this, precedents have already been set. The court had been expanded in the past. There's no reason why we shouldn't do it now. We cannot wait for these lifetime appointees to die or get ill that they can't function to do the things that are necessary to protect the American people. These folks have gone to the extreme in their views. And it's unfortunate that we have these rulings that are coming down that are actually detrimental to the health of our people, especially our women. It doesn't make sense at all. You know, expansion is something we need to do. We can't wait for Clarence Thomas to pass away. What we must do is work to get 50 solid votes in the Senate for the Democrat. And that's why I will be supporting, and I'm supporting, and will continue to support Val Demings for the U.S. Senate. Because once we get to that level, we can then do what's necessary. And we ought to be as bold as the Republicans have been. When they are in power, they do what's necessary to get the judges that they want on the courts. Why should we disarm ourselves as Democrats not to get the right people in place to protect the American people, to ensure that we have rules, laws in place that are from today, not from years ago, 50, 100 years ago. This is where the court has gone. They've gone backwards. We need to go forward. And we can't go forward with those that are there now, just those that are there. We must expand it so we can get the votes necessary to bring about the rulings that's in the best interest of the American people. Now,
Martin, I wanted to
Okay.
say something. If
Well,
I have a moment.
no, Congresswoman, if you don't mind, please, we're going to move on, but you'll have a chance. Political writer Anthony Mann is on the call with us. As you know, Anthony is writing on this race, but Anthony plays no role in editorial board recommendations, but he'll have good questions. Go ahead, Anthony.
I'd like to follow up on some of what came up in one of Martin's questions. Commissioner Holness, you have out a mailer that on the top of it says corruption and refers repeatedly to what you call the Cherfilus-McCormick scandal. Just what do you specifically think the Congresswoman has done that is corrupt and scandalous?
well, when you look at the fact that the amount of money she paid back to the Republican Party for the contract, she keeps saying it's a Biden-Harris contract, but those contracts are given through the state. And the state of Florida awarded her $23 million under the DeSantis administration. Now, maybe he didn't do it directly, but you look at the series of contribution that's paid back into the Republican PACs through her company. We counted more than $250,000. That is wrong.
So I have a question about that. What Republican PAC are you referring to, sir? First of all, when you look at it, the FEMA project did not have anything to do with DeSantis. And in fact, I want to point out that with that project, DeSantis was not taking on minorities. We had to write letters not only to the states, we wrote letters to the federal government saying that they were in violation because they did not have minorities on. Second of all, there was no Republican PAC that was ever donating to. Those are assumptions that you're making. And you know what the worst thing about it is that you are fully aware that this was not a Republican PAC. You are fully aware that it had nothing to do with Trump and DeSantis. And not only that, within my first few weeks of being in Congress, I was the only member of Congress to pay my own attorneys to actually put in a amicus brief telling DeSantis that what he was trying to do and getting an opinion by the Supreme Court was illegal and unjust. And we won that. So all you're doing is putting out information with your Republican tagline. And none of it is true. None of it is true at all. And you're aware of that.
Leadership in action.
I want to mention something also, right? The second thing I want to mention is that you always want to talk about contract equity, right? Contract equity. If you believe in contract equity, why are you trying to paint a contract that the money? So the money just goes through the state. It was actually through FEMA. We reported to FEMA. You're trying to say and create an inference of impropriety when FEMA was the actually directing person on it. Even your spokesperson asked for an investigation. So you want an investigation of FEMA because if FEMA handled all of the dollars, FEMA handled everything that was coming in and coming out. And even on the site, FEMA was there checking people out. So you're asking for an investigation on FEMA. You still haven't articulated how you're tying this to this DeSantis to it. And I want to mention something else about contracts, and this is what goes back to understanding. When these are these kinds of contracts, it depends if your company has a history of doing it, if you can show with a substantial certainty that you can complete the work. My organization was one of the only Black organizations that can show that we can do the work and have more than 1,200 people within 24 hours. 24 hours.
The PAC is Leadership in Action. The donation came from SCM.
How is Leadership in Action a Republican PAC? Tell me how Leadership in Action is a Republican.
If you go look to see who they've donated to and who they've supported, that's where the money went.
Leadership in Action is not a Republican PAC at all.
The chairman is a Republican attorney general from Montana.
No, Leadership in Action is not a Republican PAC. You are trying to infer that. But what we need to talk about is your FEC filing. If you look at your FEC filings, you receive several dollars from corporations, which is a criminal offense against the federal government. You receive several dollars that were over $2,900, which is a criminal offense against the federal government. And both of those are exactly the same offenses that we.
All of those money has been returned. If you get money in that's over the amount, you return it.
No. What you did is you actually went and got it. If you look all up and down your FEC report, you intentionally took that money, which were from corporations. You intentionally took money that was over the amount.
It was sent back to them. Whatever amount came in, if they donated, send it back. The reports are there.
Those are the same amounts. That's the same crimes that happened to Michael Cohen, who was working for Trump. And you submitted them knowing that you had several. So if you want to talk about
funds were returned.
criminal, then let's talk about your FBI investigations. Let's talk about how your office
But
was
if,
raided.
yeah,
So if you
my
want
office was never raided.
if you want to talk about criminal activity and accuse somebody, please do not make me pull out facts because you're trying to make inferences. There was never, the Republican, what makes it even more interesting is that you actually stated the same thing that the Republican National Committee was writing and putting out. You have been working in conjunction with the Republican Party. You worked with Mariner.
I have not worked with the Republicans at all. You know different than that. Nobody has worked more closely with the Democratic Party than I over the years. You look at my support for Democrats up and down the ticket, and you have not been there to support the Democrats. I have been.
One at a time. Congresswoman.
So Steve, I'm sorry. Steve, I'm sorry about this.
You're allowing her to just
because
you get a chance to respond, Commissioner Holness. Go ahead. You got 30 seconds, Mr. Congresswoman.
We know that you worked with Mariner. We have even receipts to show you worked with Mariner against me after you lost the primary. We know you worked with Mariner. In addition to that, you're putting out the same. You don't know who Mariner is? The signs that you had your people putting out. You had even wearing Democratic shirts, advocating for Mariner. So everything you're doing, trying to perpetuate that you have no facts. Everything you're doing is making it up. You're trying to discourage voters, but you don't have any facts. Whereas we actually have all the facts of all your criminal activity, and you put it on display this Friday when you showed everybody all your federal violations. And you want to go to Congress and do what? Steal? Is that what you're doing?
Let's hold it there, and let's give Mr. Holness a brief chance to respond. Go ahead.
So I have never worked with Mariner. I just realized now that he's one of the candidates that was a Republican. Never have I worked with him. Had nothing to do with Mariner at all. So I don't know where you're getting that story from. And in terms of my office being raided and I'm a criminal, where you getting that stuff from? You're making it up. There's no such thing at all that exists there. And in terms of working with the Democrats know that Holness has been there supporting them. The first place that Barack Obama had to run his campaign from in Broward County 24/7 was my office. We carried Bill Clinton's campaign through a call center that's through my office. We helped Gillum, and most people are aware of that. I've been at the forefront of helping Democrats up and down the ticket across Broward County for many, many years.
Okay.
So this made-up story about Mariner and other stuff is not true.
It is true.
I've got a follow-up, just to the Congresswoman. Just please, just a minute. I've got a follow-up question for you, Dale Holness, and I want to also return the floor to Anthony in a second. But Dale, my question is this: recently, a gentleman named Omar Smith was charged with felony bank fraud and other problems for allegedly illegally getting a PPP loan. Now, he's been described as your quote campaign guru in press accounts. How should voters process this?
So here's what I say to you on this, Steve. He was a consultant for me, not a campaign guru. Those who have been around me know that my campaigns over time had different consultants. He's consulted for many other campaigns also. Why? It's not just my campaign. Okay, and I have not worked with him for several years now. For at least 2 years, I have not worked with Omar. So he did what he did has nothing to do with me.
Can I say something, Steve? So
I'm going to return the floor. I'm going to return the floor to Anthony Mann very briefly. Just a second. Go ahead, Anthony.
I do just want to quickly get one additional clarification from Commissioner Holness. Do you think that Congresswoman Cherfilus-McCormick's firm didn't do the work that it got paid for in terms of the testing contracts? I mean, there's sort of an implication that somehow she got the improper.
Well, listen, from the press accounts that I've seen, there's an issue there. There are questions as to how that $6.5 million just suddenly appear. As Martin asked earlier, it seems as if right after that contract was given, that money appeared in Sheila's account, and she now is able to take $6.5 million and put it in the campaign.
Okay, so
she didn't do the work we said she did.
I'm not. Well, I can't. Other than the accounts that says how did the money get there, I don't know.
So let me answer that, please. And that goes back to showing Dale's character. Their work was 100% done. We had over 2,000 people employed. As I mentioned, FEMA managed it, so we know the work was done. There was nothing magical. My company has been grossing over $10, $20 million a year. I've never took out my profit sharing out of it. Never had, because I've been frugal with my account. And you know that to be true. The only reason why you put that mailer out with all those lies, you know, Florida politics also. Right now, we're going through the process of actually having, because we are in the process of doing Florida politics, and we're getting discovery to find out who sent them that article, because we know it was sent and they just republished. And that's why now in discovery, we're talking to them about it and negotiating. That's the first thing. The second thing, it is disgusting to find someone to put out those kind of lies, knowing all the propriety that's behind it. I could have started off my campaign being negative, showing all these things and talking about it. But instead I said, you know, we're going to run a fair campaign on ideas, but you turned it into lies. I have never once been arrested. I've never once been investigated. Even if you look at our family structure, it's a family business. We have 10 people who are working in the family. We have never tried to jeopardize the life, because that's not just my life, that's everybody's life. And I want to answer something also that Martin said. He asked me if any of the PPP money went to my campaign. Not a dollar went into the campaign. If you look at all the funding, we had over 500 people working during the COVID. All of them went into their paycheck because they got COVID. All of them got sick. And so all that money, 100% of it went to paychecks, to people paying their bills while they were gone. And that's why all of it was forgiven. So not a dollar ever went. And I could tell, I'll say this one more time. I am a business person. I have a law degree. In healthcare, I've never had any kind of accusations against me, which is the easiest. We go through several qualifications, and I've never, my background is impeccable. So for you now to say we didn't do work after we hired more than 2,000 people, minorities, after we fought to get Black people vaccinated and Hispanic, we actually vaccinated more than 200,000 people. That's disgusting. That was one of the biggest moments for the state of Florida and the Biden-Harris administration, who handled it from FEMA. And you turned it into something else when we still have to address your propriety and your criminal activity in your FEC report.
Okay, just a second. Oh, Congresswoman, thank you. I have one quick follow-up. You go fairly quickly, and that's a lot of information to process. I think I heard you say that you're in discovery with the Florida Politics website over how they got certain information.
Yes. So Florida Politics, when that article came out, my attorneys immediately went to and asked them to pull everything down. Right now, Florida Politics asked us if we would like to go to mediation. And one of my I can't talk about everything, but one of them is to find out, where did you get that information? And I have a strong hunch that it's going to come from the same person who's on here, who's been lying the whole time. This is not character. And I want to make one mention.
Didn't come from me.
You know, I want to make, okay, the biggest thing right now that we're fighting a Republican Party that's trying to take away every single piece of our rights. When you have people there trying to paint me, I'm the strongest Democrat they have out there. Last time when I was a crazy liberal. Now you're trying to infer that I'm actually a Republican. What you're doing now is ripping apart the Democratic Party. And this is why I've been endorsed by Nancy Pelosi, by many Democratic leaders, even the ones you're saying you're supported, because I've been a lifelong Democrat. I've been fighting this fight, not afraid to even fight for UBI for the district, when everybody was afraid to talk about what the district needs. I've been out there pushing and fighting even before I was even elected to make sure we had minorities at the table, getting vaccinated. So for you to bring up these lies and send it out to win an election, it's disgusting. And at the end of the day, the truth is going to come out. And I don't even like running bad elections. I think we should run on ideas. We should run on what we're going to do. But you start.
Dale Holness, I would like to ask you, you have the floor, but I want to ask you to address something that I think some Democratic voters in this district will pay attention to. And that is, if Sheila Cherfilus-McCormick is good enough for Nancy Pelosi, that might be good enough for a lot of voters in the 20th district. What do you say to that?
Well, listen, there's a certain advantage to being an incumbent, certainly. And I've supported Nancy Pelosi. I support the Democrats strongly. This is certainly a campaign for ideas. And if you look through my questionnaire, you'll see the ideas that I put forward in order to move our community forward, in order to create more jobs, to invest more into the high poverty, high unemployment neighborhoods of our community. We must do that. 1 in 5 residents in District 20 lives in poverty. That's 20%. And the poverty level for someone to live at, it's practically impossible. We have to do a lot of changes to make investments. And I've done that over time in Broward County. I've helped a lot of small minority and women-owned businesses get contracts. Leading the charge in Broward County from 10% when I got there in 2010 to 44%, $136 million in contract for these. Putting in place a racial equity task force ordinance to look at how we deal with the issue of racial equity, because we're robbing ourselves. According to City Financial study that showed that we lost $16 trillion in gross domestic product because of racial inequities. And if we fix it, we could grow it by $5 trillion. All of us across the community, across the country, must work together to change these dynamics that exist. We must invest more in early childhood education, especially in these low-income communities. We have to invest more in healthcare system so that there's access to these. There are many of these communities, like out in the Glades, that have tremendous problem with having access to healthcare, having access to opportunities for them to earn a living.
Okay, I'm going to return the floor to Anthony Mann. Go ahead, Anthony.
There's actually another endorsement I'd like to ask you about, Commissioner. During your time on the county commission, there was no one who was more supportive of SEIU than you were, and SEIU was incredibly supportive of you and strongly supported you in last year's special primary election. Why do you believe that SEIU has now strongly endorsed Congresswoman Cherfilus-McCormick and not you?
Again, it leads to incumbency. Once someone is in office, Anthony, everyone knows that people goes to the incumbent more often than not. That's why so many people have stayed in office for 30, 40, 50 years, because once they're an incumbent, people then shift towards the incumbency because that person is in power. So that, I believe, is the reason, because as you rightly said, nobody fought harder to protect the workers and to increase the living wage for workers in Broward County than I have. And SEIU and I were there together all along. So it is surprising to me that they shift, but understanding that now there's someone incumbent, though they won by only 5 votes, they're still there as the incumbent.
I would like to say something. First of all, I won my election by 80%. That was the primary you speak of. Second of all, I want everyone to notice the uniqueness of my endorsements. I was endorsed by Nancy Pelosi, also the Congressional Progressive Caucus, the Black Caucus, and even in Nancy Pelosi's comment, she talked about my remarkable ability to bring everyone together for the greater good. I was endorsed by the SEIU, not because I'm the incumbent, but because I sit on education and labor, and I have been fighting for labor. I've been fighting for labor, making sure that all the needs are met. I've been at every event fighting for labor. Even when they didn't endorse me, I fought for them. So it's very clear that my endorsements, if you can find another candidate, a progressive candidate who Nancy Pelosi endorsed, along with the Congressional Black Caucus and the leaders, then I would like you to let me know, because I've always said from the beginning, my job is to make sure I get done what needs to be done for the district. And that's how I was able to get Marsha Fudge here. That's how I was able to make sure that we're getting money into our district. That's how we've even been looking at accountability measures and oversight when it comes to infrastructure to make sure it's inclusive. Our 15 projects that we put forth when it came into our community project funding, all 15 are coming into the district with local people who are at the helm. And the most important and the biggest distinction between me and any one of my opponents is that I'm the only one who came from poverty and who has been able to just be prosperous in a sense that no one's ever seen it. And you know why that's so distinct is because I understand what the obstacles are. The reason why I took the community funding and reduced it down to a Google Doc, because that is one of the biggest impediments for people to get federal funding. They cannot fill out the documents. They do not have access to a grant writer. One of the biggest reasons that I focused on housing and making sure that Marsha Fudge came in to see it is because she needed to see the faces of the families who are in housing. She needed to see the faces of our elderly people who all deserve to live in dignity. But what I know from living in Broward County is that when people counted me out, when they said I was a statistic because I got pregnant, it was my district that helped me get to where I was. So I make sure that we have every little kid, everybody here connected to opportunity, and I know how to do it, and I've been doing it in 6 months. I've done that.
Congresswoman,
yes.
I was going to ask you just for a quick follow-up. Educate us a bit. Give us some examples. Tell us a couple of these 15 projects that you've gotten funding for in the district.
So the first project that we did it was with Broward Health, where we have a mobile clinic, and that's for $3 million. That mobile clinic is going to be going throughout the entire district, just like our mobile van goes. Our mobile van goes out from Monday to Sunday. On the weekends, it's out for 8 hours. On the weekday, it's going to be out later on. It's out from 5 to 7. So Broward Health would have these hours also, and they're giving services, free services, to everybody who needs them in the district. Another one we did was the Catholic Charities. Now with Catholic Charities, once we went into Congress and we saw how slow our People's Prosperity Plan was moving, which is the $1,000, we immediately looked for a community project that can help bail out our district. So what Catholic Charities is going to be doing, they're going to be receiving $3,860,000, and they're going to be giving $1,000 stipends for housing, utilities, and food for seniors. Another project that we did that goes directly in here is going to be through Catholic Legal, and Catholic Legal is going to be assisting. They're getting close to over $100,000 to assist people with some of their legal issues. Okay. Another one and this is one I wanted to mention, which is very imperative. It's the City of Miramar City of Miramar. We got City of Miramar $100,000 for their police officers so they can tend to their mental health. So we did so many different projects, and at the end of the day, I had no reason to run for Congress except for the fact I felt like we needed a change. Go ahead.
No, thank you very much. Dale Holness, I do want to ask you about a vote that you cast as a member of the Broward County Commission, because it's come up, not with you and not in this race, but it has come up in another race in a very negative context, and I hope you'll remember it and again can help us. And that is this. In 2015, the Broward County Commission voted to give a tax break to a Russian firearms manufacturer, Kalashnikov, to relocate or expand its operations in Pompano Beach. This has come up as an issue in the Senate race between Lauren Book and Barbara Sharif. Barbara Sharif, of course, being a former Broward County commissioner. It turns out the Broward Bulldog, a Florida Bulldog, broke this story. The company never actually got the money, but they did build an operation in Broward. Do you recall this vote? Do you recall? Did you make it easier for a company to build high-capacity firearms in South Florida?
So I vaguely remember the vote. It was a program sponsored through the state, the city, and the county to attract industries to the county to create jobs at the time that were looking to increase the employment level in Broward County. There wasn't a lot of detail on it, other than it was a manufacturer looking to expand manufacturing here in Broward County.
Okay. I'm going to ask Martin Dykeman and Anthony Mann for additional questions here. We're getting short on time.
The other issue of difference between you, apart from who should have the seat, is that the Congresswoman appears to strongly support President Biden for re-election, and you, Mr. Holness, have your doubts. Given that the Democratic Party has never been known for its unity, which of you is correct?
I'm sorry, repeat the question. You broke up a little bit.
I gather from the questionnaires you both submitted that you're skeptical of President Biden running again, and the Congresswoman is wholly and entirely in his corner as of now.
So I say to you, as of now, with the polls that are coming out, we need to look to ensure that when we get closer to the election, we take the temperature of the American people, see who we can put forward as the strongest candidate to win. Maybe it is President Biden. I endorse all that he's doing. I think he's doing an excellent job. I think he's the best leader we have at this time. But we need to be pragmatic also, that if it gets to where we see that the strength of winning the next presidency is not necessarily in his hands, then we need to look to see whether we adjust or not. Because the people, I was in church yesterday, and several people came up to me and made that statement. I didn't solicit it. They actually asked me, who else can we find? And I said, right now, there's no one that we can find. They actually expressed some concern about Vice President Harris also, said she's not that very strong. I says, well, look, you can't expect her to overshadow the president at this point in time. Her job is to support. So we have to be pragmatic and look to see who is the best person we can find to put forward. And certainly, I'm hoping it's President Biden. But if we're in a position where we are not achieving the poll numbers that we should have, we need to really look and consider who we put forward.
Okay, go ahead to the same question, Congresswoman.
So we're part of a Democratic team, and what we've been able to see Biden do has never been done before. He single-handedly with his cabinet helped us avert one of the biggest wars that Russia was trying to bring us into by turning it into an economic war. If you see our numbers, what we've been able to do when it comes to our economic standing as a country, that has never been done before. What's going on right now is that we have inflation and price gouging that's racing as fast as we're making every gain. And it's important that we're a team, that we can be able to squash any kind of negative comments by telling the truth. And that's why when we say that Biden shouldn't run, it's absolutely wrong. He has been stellar, but we have, and if he was going to run, there's a woman who's almost capable of the job. We accepted at the bottom. The president navigated all these avoid prevent any kind of wrong and make sure that we can even negotiate gas. That hasn't been done before. But we all have a responsibility to go out there, get known, and to fight as one force. Anybody who comes in and says anything else is actually working for our opponent, which is the Republican Party. And so this is the problem I have. When we have one leader who's been fighting and actually winning, but we have other people who are talking louder about certain things that we can't control. We can't control inflation. Look at the entire country, the entire world. The entire world is actually suffering from inflation. Look at what's going on with gas. We couldn't control that. Russia has relationships with the oil. When it comes to price of food, Russia and Ukraine have the fertilizer. These are things that we couldn't control. But what I can say is what Biden can control, he's done an excellent job controlling. What I can say is when I had an issue with him when it came to Title 42, we actually spoke about it. We met with him about it, and he even tried to retract Title 42. So every step that we've come as members of Congress and in the Senate, and we've actually voiced our opinion to our leader, President Biden, he has listened to us and has been fighting for us. So we have the obligation as a team to make sure that all of these false statements are putting laid to rest.
Okay. That's going to be the last word. We've been at it here for close to an hour, and I greatly appreciate your participation, both of you. And I'll tell you what we'll do. I'm going to give each candidate a chance to make a brief closing statement about your candidacy, and most importantly, what distinguishes you from your opponent and opponents in this race. And I'll begin with you, Dale Holness.
Well, let me thank you for having this forum. Here's the difference. 18 years as a public servant, delivering for our people within our community, working very hard to bring folks together to make things happen. During the pandemic, as mayor of Broward County, I brought the mayors together. We had some difficulties at the onset, but somehow we found consensus. Some wanted to shut down, some wanted to stay open. It was a fight, but we got together, and in doing so, the statistics that I got back then was that we had less deaths at the time from COVID than did Palm Beach or Miami-Dade County per capita. So I'm still very connected to many of our local electeds, and the actions that are taken will have to be utilized through the local offices. That's where the execution happens with the dollars when they come down. So for housing, we need to expand the Section 8 housing vouchers to ensure that we're putting funds to build new projects. We must build a tremendous amount of new projects in order to help these folks. When we talked about the high poverty level, that's within the district. Many of these people within the district need housing assistance, or they're going to be homeless. We have the issue of mental illness that is being taken care of by our jails rather than funding being put in place. We need to send funds to help the city, the county, the police departments to deal with that issue. So we don't have so many people in our jails who have addiction problem, who have mental illness problem. That is a huge issue for us that is robbing us of our human capital. There's a tremendous amount of investments that we must make to lift our people up. We must use every program possible, including the Opportunity Zone Act, to put more money into these high poverty, high unemployment communities. We started that with Prosperity Broward, working with the Alliance and the county to put funding in our 6 highest poverty, unemployment, zip codes, so we can bring those folks up. Tremendous amount of investments and work needs to be done to assist these communities to ensure that they're in a place where they can prosper, because their prosperity means prosperity for all of us in our community and our nation.
All right. Thank you so much, Dale Holness. Congresswoman, you have the floor.
Thank you so much for having me this evening or this morning. I want to start off by saying it is a pleasure to be able to represent the district that I love and that I grew up in, but it's even more of a pleasure to use all my talent. Within these years of being in healthcare, I've served on several nonprofit boards, have my own nonprofit, and really have been giving to the community. But what really separates me is that within the 6 months that I've been in Congress, I've been able to do things that have not been seen by any member of Congress. We've been able to bring down funding for housing. We've been able to even bring down a Secretary of Housing so we can talk about how we can bring more money in. We've also stood with President Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi in our district. Last week, 2 weeks ago, we flew in with President Joe Biden's wife, Dr. Jill Biden, so we could expand cancer treatment in our district, where I personally put in from our office over 900,000 of our community projects going towards cancer treatment. In addition to that, we also have been stimulating the economy by making sure that more of our people in our district are actually being educated on appropriations. And we've also kept every promise where it has been to alleviate the pain and the strain of our district. So if you ask us what separates us, is that I am the congresswoman in the district that everyone describes as hitting the ground running. And I've hit the ground running, not just because of my educational background as an attorney and a healthcare professional, but also because I love the district and I'm innovative. I've been able to bring down fundings and connect people totally to healthcare, funding, and projects. And so I ask everyone to vote for me again so we can continue the work. And as I mentioned, if you look at my endorsement, there has not been one member of Congress who has been able to build coalitions in the short amount of time like I have. Especially a member who actually ran against an incumbent, then got into the seat to still build those relationships with the whip leader, Steny Hoyer, Nancy Pelosi, and to get those endorsements. It's a testament of not just my character, but my heart, because I fight for the people, because it's what's right for the people. And so I ask everyone to re-elect me to represent them and to continue to do the work. Everybody has a track record, and no one has done what I've been able to do. No one.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, both of you. Best of luck to you both. Thank you for being with us here this morning. Many thanks.